Stephanie?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, and all participants joining us from different regions. I am Fatou Ndoye. I'm the head of the Secretariat of the Abidjan Convention for Cooperation in the Protection, Management, and Development of the Marine and Coastal Environment of the Atlantic, the West, Central, and Southern Africa region. I will be your moderator today, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar. Today's webinar on strengthening the global response to the massive influx of sargassum seaweed blooms follows the adoption of a UNEA 7 resolution. And today's session will bring together policymakers, scientists, and practitioners to discuss both the scale of the challenge and pathways for coordinating global action. As you all know, sargassum influxes are no longer localized events or a seasonal issue. They are increasing in frequency and intensity, and it is an escalating environmental, economic, and social challenge, particularly affecting West Africa and the wider Caribbean region, with implications that are increasingly global. And today's discussions will allow us to connect science, policy, implementation pathways, and regional experience. So it is my hope today that we will engage in very lively discussions. But before that, we will have a presentation on the UNEA Resolution 7.4. We will also hear from the scientific community on the drivers and trends regarding the influx of sargassum, seaweed blooms. And we will also hear from one country, a country experience in dealing with this challenge, as well as from the Cartagena Convention on Regional Cooperation. At the end of this 1 hour, the first hour, we will have a Q&A session where we invite participants to share their comments and their questions in the chat. And my colleague Wanjiro Edna from UNEP will read them for the speakers so that we can have a feedback and answers to those questions. And we really encourage all the speakers to stick to their allocated time so that we can have a discussion at the end of the session. So without further ado, I will invite Mrs. Susan Gardner to deliver opening remarks on behalf of UNEP. And just before I hand over the floor to Susan, I just want to do a brief introduction. Susan Gardner, who is the director of the Ecosystem Division at UNEP, has over 30 years of experience in international environmental policy.
Thank you,
and
Fatou.
she has worked. Yes.
Fatou, I think a lot of the people on this call know me quite well. So
Okay.
if I can help you too, I know as a moderator, your biggest challenge is keeping everybody to time. So I'd be happy to donate back whatever time you're going to invest in boring everyone with my bio.
Yes, more than welcome to have you now, Susan. Go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Fatou. And colleagues, it's great to see everyone. And Fatou, I like how you got us kicking off with the preparation for a really lively conversation, and I'm looking forward to that as well. I've had the pleasure now to be joining you from our headquarters in New York, where countries are here all together working through how to implement the BB&J agreement, how to ensure that we're all cooperating to protect the ocean. And it is these discussions here that speak directly to a lot of the same kind of challenges that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. Countries are working out how are we going to govern the high seas and the resources that no one controls. Everyone has responsibility for, though, and everyone should benefit. And we have almost never done this before, so it really does require real ambition, and it also requires real multilateral cooperation, similar to what we have with sargassum. And so we know with sargassum, as you were saying, Fatu, it doesn't just stop at national borders. You know, we're seeing impacts that are carried across the globe with currents. And so something that happens in one place shows up somewhere else. And so national responses alone, individual countries trying to solve the problem, it's not enough. And that's similar to what we're doing here in New York over these last couple of weeks with BB&J. This work really matters for the challenge, and these two efforts really reinforce each other. We're building resilience in ecosystems so that we can better absorb the various shocks. We're recognizing the value of nature for people because we know when the ocean is under stress, people feel it directly, and we're going to hear some of that in this webinar today. And we're sharing data and science and capacity so that no country has to go alone. We all go together. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from the experience of the Environmental Protection Authority, Ms. Cove, about the experience in Ghana, where we know in the Western region, fishers have really been describing very difficult situations with their nets coming up full of seaweed and almost no fish, and motors getting clogged and beaches overwhelmed with decaying algae. And, you know, for families that depend on the ocean, that translates into less income. That translates into less food security and you know, children who are not going to go to school. And so these are realities. And we understand there's a number of different drivers: warmer waters, nutrient pollution, changes in the equatorial upwelling patterns. All of these different pressures are combining. And so we have to ensure that our response connects in that same way. And that's where UNEP is very proud to be contributing to some of the solutions. I'll just mention 2 ways that we hope that we can be of service to member states in taking forward this resolution. First is by addressing the root causes. And so we have decades of experience working with countries to reduce nutrient pollution through, for example, the Global Program of Action and the Global Partnership on Nutrient Management. These are backed by science and data, and they help guide decisions that are needed urgently. And the second, of course, is on cooperation, where we have experience such as what we bring through the Regional Seas program, sharing information across regions, across stakeholders, across partners, strengthening monitoring, building capacity that we need for a coordinated response. So this is how we link what's happening on land, at sea, and across borders. And so this is, you know, what we are counting on all of you in this webinar today to take further. Because, you know, at UNEA 7, when countries agreed to this sargassum resolution, they gave us a roadmap. And what that means is that they agreed this is a global problem, and they agreed that they're ready to act. And they trusted UNEP to support them. And we're very, very honored to have your trust. And we're honored on this journey to turn that vision into action. So thank you, Fatu, for the opportunity to share some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Susan. We really appreciate you taking time from your busy schedule in New York. Now, let me turn first to my colleague, Stephanie, to find out if we have our guest speaker, Ambassador Mentre, online. If not, we will... Stephanie?
Not yet. So we can move to Claudia. Apologies for that. He's having some technical issues. So when he does have an opportunity to join, I will notify you so we can give him the floor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Stephanie. So now that we have heard from Susan, I would like to move to really what prompted this resolution and invite the Dominican Republic to the proponent of the resolution to introduce resolution 7.4. And I would like to have Mrs. Claudia Taboada, Minister Counselor for Environment at the Permanent Mission of the Dominican Republic to the United Nations in Geneva, to take the floor and give us an introduction to the resolution. Claudia, if I may call you Claudia, you have the floor.
Yes, of course, and thank you very much for this space, and thank you everyone at UNEP and everyone presenting today for coming together. I know that for many of us, this is close to Easter. Some of us are already on Easter break, and some really expecting the long weekend that we have ahead. But I do think that this comes at a very right time since coming from UNEA 7 and having this opportunity to talk a bit more about the issue. Because one of the things that we realized since we started working on this issue is that there's a lot of knowledge, scientific knowledge out there, that there was not enough recognition of the issue in worldwide, so outside from those affected territories. And I think that is one of the main accomplishments of having this resolution that was agreed upon consensus at UNEA 7. So just a bit of I'll start a bit of a background on the resolution. As we know here, since 2011, we've seen in the Caribbean coast from Mexico to Punta Cana in Dominican Republic and going all to the Eastern Caribbean countries, that they have been receiving millions of tons of sargassum. And the issue with this is that this seaweed accumulates on the shores and invades the beaches, disrupts tourism, agricultural activities, and cost local communities millions of dollars. At the same time, the massive quantities of sargassum we are receiving are damaging our marine ecosystem and the living species, particularly coral reefs, that inhabit them. So one of the I remember that coming with starting I would say our campaign on sargassum and getting full recognition of this issue as a crisis in the region. One of the things that we'd encounter, everyone was just like, why are you talking so much about a seaweed? And one of the things that I found very interesting is that when we started showing pictures and explaining what was the issue, I think that it stopped being just a seaweed, and people started understanding that this is a more complex problem with a huge environmental background linked to so many other things and so many, and I'll speak further on that, and to certainly what we understand as systemic issues. So as we know, sargassum in itself is an endemic and important ecological phenomenon. I don't want to go into the science of sargassum because I know that we're going to have from the expert here some knowledge on that. And we do recognize it as such. We do see it as well as it has been called as a floating tropical rainforest of the ocean, and that provides refuge for migratory species. It's an essential habitat for hundreds of species of fish and invertebrates that provides that protection and food for endangered species, including sea turtles, for example. And as we have always said, sargassum is not the problem. Sargassum has been experiencing uncontrolled growth, which has become a crisis for over 30 territories and is starting to expand to other regions like West Africa. So sargassum is not the issue, it's the massive blooming of sargassum the issue. And this issue is one difficult to ignore for Caribbean countries, which depend heavily on marine resources and tourism. Satellite images have shown us a clear trend. The arrival of sargassum on our shores is a phenomenon that intensifies each year, and the lengthening of its season and increasing in the quantities collected on the shores and oceans. What we have seen, we used to talk of a sargassum season being roughly 3 or 4 months, and now we're seeing almost full year the sargassum issue in our coast. What used to be just a problem of the East Coast, at least in the case of Dominican Republic, certainly became an issue for the whole coastline of all Dominican Republic, the south, the north, impacting many areas that are just currently starting to develop in tourism. And when we started seeing and talking with our neighbors in the Caribbean, what we saw is that it was the same issue for them, and having smaller archipelagic territories, we saw them covered all around the coast with sargassum. and with no means to how to deal with this. So for those that maybe could be here in the webinar and don't know, when sargassum accumulates in the beaches, it dries out, it generates a foul odor, it is unattractive in appearances. No one wants to pay. And for this, you have to know that most of our GDP in the Caribbean comes from tourism. If no one wants to pay to come to a beach that is covered in brown seaweed. So it is unpleasant for our tourism, for our visitors. You have airlines that already, just as they can say, give an alert for hurricane season, they now give an alert for sargassum season, which certainly makes you think twice when you are booking your vacation. So we also have the issue that collection methods, although we've improved them a lot, and we now have in many of the islands, we do have more environmentally friendly mechanisms, they still have a negative impact on the coast. It harms marine biodiversity, such as corals, because it impedes the sunlight from going to the corals. Small fish, small sea turtles. It has affected the small, especially small scale fishing industry in our islands, and it has been linked to many other issues like health issues, because of the releases of the gases and heavy metals that it has. So it has also a negative effect on human issues and human health. And on top of that, if we go as from what we've seen in cases, for example, like Dominican Republic, it has even impacted our energy generation, as we do have turbines that are cooled down with seawater. We've seen them trapped with sargassum, even costing the life of some technicians that have struggled to release the turbine so that we can have energy generation. So to the date, the attempts to eradicate and control sargassum worldwide have been slow, they have been costly, they have been generally unsuccessful. It is estimated that the environmental and economic cost of biological invasions by non-native species in the first part of the last decade amounted to over 1.4 trillion per year globally, which is a lot. And we're not exempt of this when it comes to the sargassum seaweed issue. So for the Dominican Republic, it is clear that the massive influx of sargassum has evolved into a regional crisis that poses a threat to the economic development of the greater Caribbean countries. Furthermore, it has also started to become an issue for other countries across the Atlantic and of course, in also mainland Latin America, in coast where they have already started seeing sargassum seaweed in Central America and the coast of Colombia. So therefore, our efforts cannot, as it was said before, they cannot be isolated. The sargassum crisis requires a collective solution. So this is why after the pandemic, after 2020, the Dominican Republic has spearheaded and has worked towards leading regional global efforts to have this massive sargassum seaweed blooms recognized as a crisis. In 2021, we began those efforts to resume those commitments that were made at the regional conference on sargassum held in Guadeloupe in 2019. That, as we know, though many commitments were made, they were stopped after because we had the pandemic. So we tried to resume that work done there, as we saw it as highly important, and to give it more of a political strength this time around. So in 2022, we had the visit of the president of the General Assembly for that session, Mr. Abdullah Shahid, and then he, seeing the problem, really was very empathetic with the sargassum problem and addressed this issue as well as in the Ocean Conference in Lisbon, Portugal. We talked thoroughly in the Ocean Conference because we were very disappointed that issues like these that are a direct effect on blue economy, that have a direct effect on development, were not properly addressed. So we started this regional campaign as well in September 2022 with our partners from with Ecuador, Costa Rica, and Panama. With those governments, we as well had a declaration in the midst of the Association for Development and Democracy, which is a group that these countries with Dominican Republic form, where we talked about sargassum. Then we had a presentation in November 2022 in the Cooperation Conference of the Association of Caribbean States. So it was progressive approach to this, and we went everywhere where there was a multilateral space or regional space. There was Dominican Republic was there talking about sargassum. We did it as well in the Central America Integration System, in the meeting of head of states. We did it with the EU and CELAC meeting. We had our president, well, we had it in the 9th Summit of Head of States of the Association of Caribbean States. We had the regional Greater Caribbean European Union Regional Conference that we did solely on sargassum, that we did it in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, that had the participation of over 35 countries of the region, including high-level officials, and many commitments were made there that advance a lot the work at a regional and sub-regional level on sargassum. And we continue this work towards 2023, towards the Ocean Conference in Nice, where we had a high-level event with the ministers of France, Mexico, and Dominican Republic, and we adopted a sargassum action plan. And I give you a bit of the background and history, because if we're talking about an issue that has been increasing and growing since 2011, and then for the last 5 to 6 years, we've been looking for the right mechanism and to insert this problem in the different agendas at a regional level and across regional level. This was a work done especially to build momentum towards the achievement of this resolution at the UNEA. And I am very proud to say that this is the first time we presented as Dominican Republic a resolution at the UNEA, and because it comes to us also as a great commitment with the region, because we see it that it addresses one of the greatest environmental, economic, and development threats to the Caribbean. And again, we modified the first draft to even include over other regions that are also starting to be affected. So this threat has expanded to other regions, making it a cross-regional and transboundary issue, as everything with the ocean and environmental issues is. So the first draft of our resolution was quite ambitious, but we did understand that the current geopolitical scenario and having a fragmented region and having the issues that we now have with the liquidity crisis in many of the multilateral forums, we do see that our draft as a compromise. The resolution was a result of a compromise with our first draft, understanding that this will allow us to work on some of the key issues of this crisis, especially those that for us are of highest importance, its causes and its management. And to this, there are some points we wish to clarify. And as I was saying at the beginning, this resolution is a clear example of a systemic problem. The massive bloom of sargassum are a symptom of a greater problem. For many years now, SIDS and other developing countries have grown used to lightly accepting new normalities and pouring all political and economic efforts on adapting to these new normalities, which have been provoked mostly by the action, or in some cases inaction, of other developed and industrialized countries. So the resolution, even though it doesn't calls this crisis as a severe escalating socioeconomic and environmental issue in the wider Caribbean region and West Africa, and one that may also be a challenge for other regions. But please have no doubt that for us, this is a crisis. And the resolution states, and reality confirms, that the severe negative impacts that this issue has on the economic and social and cultural development of our countries and our territories, in particular tourism, fishing, livelihoods, and health, is something to not be taken lightly. So this resolution calls for many things. It calls for the enhancement of international cooperation and collaboration, which we think that this was the most appropriate forum to start solidifying these different conventions and these different efforts between regions especially, and between the different mechanisms that have been working towards finding solutions for the management and the causes of sargassum. But it also has made very specific requests to the executive director to assist not only the developing affected countries on making their national and regional measure plans and action plans. It requests also as well to enhance that cooperation among scientific, technical, and policy initiatives. We see that there is a lot of science out there We want that science to really push forward the decisions, political and technical, that are being made towards how we manage, how we can turn this into an opportunity, because we understand that this is an issue that has a lot of negative impacts, but we also see that there can be a positive side to it if we know how to manage and to take advantage of what we can see also as a resource. So on this sense, and of course we have one of the ones that we think it's of high importance to prepare that report on those existing activities, technical and financial resources, initiatives and actions by regional or international organizations and relevant stakeholders to address this issue, especially and not limited to their causes, its monitoring, prevention and management. So, and then we have, of course, the high-level meeting, which we're very much looking forward to having eventually and seeing the results of this work done. But one of the things that we cannot be we cannot ignore is the fact that all these actions and this commitments that we've made with the resolution are subject to the availability of funding, which is a reality that we're now seeing in all multilateral fora. But mostly what we see is that it's also very tied to political will. So the sargassum crisis needs a determination of its causes and a sound management plan that allows all affected territories to address it, because SIDS continue to carry the heaviest consequences of environmental inaction. We see it with the issue of climate change, we see it with sea level rise, we see it with one very concrete problem that we can see every single year in our coast, which is sargassum seaweed bloom. Though we do keep a positive view of what this could become and how we could take advantage of something of this new normality that we're being forced to adapt to, we also see that there has to be greater accountability, and there has to be also more support in the way of economic and funding and support for the implementation of this commitments and this resolution. And this is what we're looking forward. And hopefully, that's why we say that this webinar comes in a very good moment, as we're looking forward to the work of how we're going to implement this commitment and this resolution, and on how we can work together towards addressing an issue where there's a lot of science to guide us. It's not a new problem. It's something that has been increasing gradually since over a decade. So now for us, it's the time to see it with commitment, and also with the responsibility of an understanding that this is an issue that has a lot of negative impacts for the development of our territories, and it is something that is expanding, and the consequences will be seen as well in other places. So we are now in the right moment to start addressing it formally, and this was the vision with the resolution and with recognition. So with that, I close.
Thank you very much, Claudia, for this overview and really dwelling a little bit more on the history and the context for us to truly understand where we're coming from. Now, before we move on, I would like to remind all the speakers to really stick to time, if possible, because we really want to have an exchange with the participants. We're about 170 on this webinar, so we'd really want to seize the opportunity to also hear from the audience. Now, I would like to turn to the science about sargassum, and really invite two speakers. The first speaker will be Dr. Shelley Ann Cox, who's the Chief Fisheries Officer for Barbados, to really delve into the science around sargassum. What are the main drivers behind the increasing frequency and scale of the phenomenon that we're now facing, and what are the early warning systems in place and current responses? We might, because Dr. Cox has to leave, we might accommodate one or two questions immediately after her presentation. And I will turn to my colleague Wanjiru Edna immediately after Dr. Cox's presentation. Dr. Cox, you have 5 minutes. Thank you, and over to you.
It's a pleasant good morning and greetings from Barbados. I'm just trying to share my slides, so just give me a moment. But I'm now working in the capacity of Chief Fisheries Officer in Barbados. Before I was with the University of the West Indies Center for Resource Management and Environmental Studies, where along with Professor Hazel Oxenford and other members of the team, we would have worked towards establishing the Sargassum Outlook Bulletin for the Eastern Caribbean. So this morning, I'm going to highlight some of the work that we've done, but really looking to address the sargassum issue as a transatlantic triple threat and how it has the environmental, social, and economic impact, and then what interventions have been in place to address it, how we're looking at valorization, and what are the, I would say, the innovations that have been most feasible, and then issues relating to scaling up these innovations and the startup companies that have pursued turning sargassum into an opportunity, turning it into gold, and trying to address the environmental issue that it poses as a hazard. Happy to hear Claudia referring to the UNEA resolution and the work that is in train, and happy to contribute to this cause. And of course, I come from a network. I know Lagi is presenting as well, but there's still the Sargassum Network and other networks of scientists, researchers, innovators working very hard over the last few years to explore this as an opportunity. All right, so I am having a slight issue with bringing up my presentation. So I'm just going to beg for 30 seconds to jump off and jump back on.
Stephanie, can we have colleagues present the slides for Dr. Cox rather than
Thanks, Fatu. Unfortunately, she did not share them with us yet.
oh,
But I see. Geoffrey?
Dr. Cox, are you back online, or should we invite Dr. Collado Vedes? Oh, there she is. Dr. Cox, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Just confirm that you can see my screen and the presentation.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right. Yeah, so the title of the presentation really is Scientific Trends and Sargassum. But the frame that I'm going to speak about this morning is sargassum as a transatlantic triple threat. And just to look at the timeline as it relates to when the initial shock happened back in 2011, and we were scrambling for answers. Sharing lessons to cope began around 2015, and we started to acknowledge these multi-sectoral impacts. Along the timeline, of course, too, we were looking at the scientific literature associated with the Sargasso Sea and seeing how that could help us with understanding, sargassum, how fast it grows. But knowing that the proliferation of sargassum in the transatlantic was as a result of several different factors, and we had to really find out and research those. So you would see this timeline of science, forecasting, exploration about growth and mortality, all happening along this timeline. And then, 2020, we started to see ramped up efforts around science communication. I'll share some of those. And then moonshot ideas. So 2022, we started to see these startups with ideas about sinking sargassum and exploring blue carbon credits. We saw the integration of digital technologies, AI and machine learning, especially to support sargassum innovations and valorization. So having that timeline ahead, and from that time until now, we're still seeing sargassum innovations. We're seeing efforts for innovation hubs, climate change accelerator labs, and, resources from IDBs, IOC, UNESCO, UNDP, especially around sargassum, exploring it as a hazard and opportunity. So this infographic here kind of explains, sargassum exists in the Sargasso Sea. And then, there are always questions about where is this sargassum actually coming from? And then all of the contributing factors to it. And then, sargassum detaching from the new consolidation region and being transported to the wider Caribbean, but also West Africa. I'm from Barbados, so we are, a small island, the east of the Eastern Caribbean chain, but, it's just water between us and West Africa. And so we understand the complexities and we share similarities between West Africa and the Caribbean. And then we see these negative impacts on the shorelines, of course, vulnerability to impacted sectors. But of course, the interventions we've been seeing is research, mitigation, forecasting, adaptation, monitoring. But most importantly, we've been seeing a lot of policy development and coordination to address this issue. And this is at an international, regional, and national levels in our experience. So, of course, this infographic is from the Sargassum white paper that we wrote back in 2021. Of course, it seems like a long time ago, but it's just yesterday, where we were trying to see, as it relates to adaptation, how we were using forecasting. Some people started to use booms and barriers, collection and disposal, harvesting and reuse in terms of those initiatives for adaptation. Mitigation, of course, we still needed to understand the root causes of the issue. And then policy development and coordination. We had quite a few regional levels and regional meetings in the Caribbean. And now at the international level with the resolution, we can see the value of social science research really helping to give important insights to the barriers to establishing these sustainable governance arrangements. So when we think about sargassum, we think about the hazard, the opportunity, heads or tails. So when we think about the tails, we think about this transatlantic triple threat. Impacts to the economy, impacts to the environment, impacts to the social. And there are many negative impacts. I know Claudia spoke about these, so I'll just go through very quickly. We've seen significant impacts to the tourism sector. It's been described a single threat to the Caribbean tourism industry. This is one of our beaches, Crane Beach, also ranked one of the top 10 beaches in the world. But you see in 2015 how sargassum has tainted this beach and negatively impact tourism. Fisheries. The sargassum clogs fishing gear, it impedes navigation. We've seen engine overheating, access to boats, so lost fishing time. The environment, of course, we're seeing many impacts, damage to near shore. Beach sargassum may provide a challenge for turtles coming up to lay eggs and then the hatchlings going into the ocean. Coastal living, which is of a great concern. In Barbados, for sure, people have been reporting respiratory illnesses being exposed to the hydrogen sulfide from the decomposition of sargassum. We have erosion of electrical appliances and equipment as well, based on reports from coastal residents. Public health, of course, harmful health impacts, concerns too about how the heavy metals in sargassum could contaminate water supplies. And at energy, we saw some impacts in Puerto Rico, where sargassum, got into the intake pipes at the generator, which resulted in power outages and water as well, also affecting water production in the West Virgin Islands. So there are definitely lots of negative impacts reported. And the response, of course, was to develop these early warning systems. The Optical Oceanography Laboratory at USF, has been consistent with the online monitoring platform and uploading daily images of sargassum. Impressive work behind that in order to get the satellite imagery and processing. We've seen CLS as well with their SAM-Tool platform, similar concepts, higher resolution data in some aspects. CARICOOS, NOAA, a lot of research going on, of course, in the Mexican Caribbean around early warning systems, and looking at how these products help.
Dr. Cox, 2 more
Yes,
minutes,
please.
please. Two more minutes,
yes.
please.
How these, I would say, tools are assisting people, especially those people working in the areas of planning responses to sargassum coastal cleanups. We've seen information distilled and tailored to sectors. So to zoom in on our sub-regional outlook bulletin, where we had tailored messages for the sectors and simplify the information. Monitoring systems, as well as citizen science that allows people to go in, report sargassum, and of course this helps with ground truthing for the monitoring platforms and forecasting platforms, which is valuable for us as the scientists producing this information, and then of course converting them into policy briefs to brief and update our policymakers about what decisions need to be made to address this issue. We've seen apps, solutions, protocols, many monitoring protocols developed. These were from the university, and tools and platforms. So there's the Sargassum Innovation Hub, the SARGNet listserv. Lagia could speak more to that. We had the SPA-RAP online forum, for instance, a podcast, several webinars, workshops, symposia, conference, especially like this, and a science communication, many posters, innovative communication products to be able to speak about the issue, but also offer messages about how best we can address it. We see civil society, banding together with cleanups and doing other innovative things, referencing the sargassum white paper. And then the reference repository, a tool where all of the science is in one repository to support other researchers. And of course, research on the social science side, where we look at people's perceptions and how best to address this issue. Mainstreaming, when we look at governance frameworks and how sargassum management fits into blue economy, where some sectors are negatively impacted, but there are promises for sargassum and the use for renewable energy, product innovation, and blue carbon. We saw regional policy, especially in the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting back in 2015, the resolution and the Caribbean Program for Sargassum in 2019. So that was on the tail side. On the head side, we see sargassum. We don't think about the influxes on the beach. We think about them as sargassum-kissed shores, which is a catalyst for innovation, where there are innovative harvesting equipment, sargassum value chains, innovative institutional arrangements, and a muse for artistic pursuit. So we've seen, music videos, several art showcases inspired by sargassum, as a nursery, as its positive side. And then we've seen resources being developed to try to catalyze uses and valorization. We talk about in that document how fresh sargassum could be used for different things. And I just want to really end the presentation by suggesting that, going in towards the future, we can explore quite innovative things with sargassum, blue blockchain, tech startup collaborations for charting the path forward. And I wanted to end with, we have a sargassum poem online for those of you who can listen to it after the webinar. But I think this is a very strong stanza of the poem that suggests that we are the culmination of a transatlantic crossing. So if anything, we are the ones who know how to make the best thing out of an inconvenience, are the ones who know what it is to overcome. So I'll repeat the golden question: heads or tails? Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Cox. And we have a lot of participants that are asking for your presentation, and I hope that you can drop it in the chat and so that we can share it with the participants. I wanted to turn to Edna, to Wanjiro Edna, to see if we have a question for Dr. Cox. However, we have questions, Wanjiro?
Yes, we have one question for Dr. Cox.
One question.
Yes.
So please go ahead, and Dr. Cox, maybe a very, very brief answer there, a minute or two. Wanjiro, let's hear the question. Thank you.
So the question is from Nick. He's asking, what financial initiatives and incentives are the Barbados government taking to encourage real disruptive solutions at scale, to encourage businesses to invest in delivering solutions to the sargassum problem in Barbados?
Well, at this time, we are finalizing our sargassum adaptive management strategy. Central government does have a budget committed to clean up, but we're in the process of developing our Sargassum Management Act that would outline these particular concessions. There are concessions associated with what our ministry already provides, but definitely there's been support in, having innovators put forward their proposals in a recent Future Blue innovation hub that was sponsored by the government. And then, of course, with some of the innovations like rum and sargassum, having support from regional organizations such as the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy. And these are some of the, I would think, some of the good demonstrations of how government has been supporting some of the initiatives, but we're formalizing how those concessions would look like, especially how we go about looking at harvesting permits, as well as our protocols and standards for sargassum-related products.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cox, for really bridging science and country experience. And but we will continue on the science path, and I would like to invite Dr. Ligia Collado Vides, who's a marine botanist at Florida International University, to speak about algal and seaweed bloom more broadly.
Thank you. I just want to double check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see your slides, and we have 5 minutes.
Oh, I thought I had 10. So everybody's 10. So this is 10 minutes, and I practice for 10. So thank you very much. I really, really thank you for the invitation. I think it's we have been calling for actions for many, many years. It's better now, kind of late, but it's better now than never. So I'm going to go really and dive into the science. This is not going to be into the management. Is really what are the trends in the algal? I was asked to talk about algae and seaweeds, but seaweeds are also algae. The difference, they are macroalgae and microalgal blooms. So very briefly, when we talk about the history of micro and microalgal blooms, they have been in the planet since ever. And pre-20th century, the blooms were there, rare and localized. And we don't know because we didn't have a good amount of monitoring programs or the tools that we have now. By the mid-1900s, we had an urbanization and fertilizer use that was linked to a first documented large scale of coastal algal blooms. And when at this moment I'm talking about HABs, microalgal blooms. As we moved to the 20th century, in the 70s and the 90s, temperature started to increase. And there are several studies demonstrating that it was a relationship with temperature increase. So we have more frequent outbreaks, but also we start seeing more evidently outbreaks of macroalgal blooms. As we move into the 21st century, there is a combination of complex processes linking temperature increase, eutrophication, changes in the current, and we are seeing now massive recurring blooms, both micro and microalgae. So the take-home message from this very brief history, we can take a whole semester just talking about that, is we are moving from rare events to frequent global phenomena. Still, there is some controversy of what is happening with the microalgal blooms, and we will be talking about that. We will explore all the graphs, but really there is much more research with which we can see what is happening. So in this graph, what you can see is, very briefly as well, from a very recent paper from Key and collaborators, you can see here in the map in your left, from 2003 to 2012, and these are graphs showing the trends on the abundance of macroalgal blooms. In blue, you can see that it's going to be less amount. In red is where you have high amounts of macroalgal blooms, and you see a trend, a change, dramatic change from 2013 to 2022. So we are seeing a dominant, a presence, visible presence of macroalgal blooms, mainly sargassum in this case, but that is not the only one. And what you can see here in the microalgae, I just want to clarify the Key et al. In 2026, they use trichodesmons and notaceae, those very important phytoplankton species, but not all of them. And still they see a trend, an increasing trend, but it's only the 2% in 2013 and 1% in the previous trend. What is incredible here is, starting 2010, we see a dramatic increase in the macroalgal bloom. So we are looking not only at sargassum, we're looking at other ones. So Key proposes a potential regime shift favoring macroalgae specialized species of microalgae. So this is oceanic dynamics change. There is this other paper which I found absolutely interesting, and I just bring in these two papers because we're talking about trends. The studies from Hong is really more into the mid-latitudes, 49 degree north and south. And what they see measuring chlorophyll A, so there is not only two different species of phytoplankton, but chlorophyll A, is that there is a decrease of 32% average. And you can see the decreases are going to be shown in blue and increases more into the yellow, 17% an increase. And when we are talking about marine high levels of chlorophyll events, we are seeing that 21% is reducing, 5% is decreasing. So the trend that we see here, as a general trend, oceanically speaking, is we have an increase in macroalgae abundance, we have a potential decrease of the long term, and it's a decline in marine primary production, depending on phytoplankton. So what my message here for all of us that, and for policymakers as well and managers, is that we are getting into an era in which we need to understand things that are much more complex, because that has to deal with the solutions that we implement. So when you think about phytoplankton, the productivity of phytoplankton is going to be depending on a series of factors that I don't have time to explain here, but increasing in temperature can create a stratification, a reduction in the availability of nutrients, unless you have vertical mixings that are feasible in particular times. So phytoplankton is responsible for half of the biosphere net primary productivity. Is huge. This is a very important thing for us to think about, oceanic level. In our review that we just recently published in December 2025, we see by gathering and integrating all the recent information that macroalgal blooms are also sustained and maintaining and growing in the ocean by complex elements similar to these. So you have the vertical mixing, you have the sea surface temperature that is facilitating, but there is something else. They are having a microbiome that have bacteria that are able to fix nitrogen. So if you have a decrease in nitrogen availability, the sargassum has the ability to have its own fabric of nitrogen. So this cartoon by Bach really resumes very interestingly. I just want you to, you will have this slide, so I have the text for those who want to understand each one of the steps. I have very little amount of time, so I just want you to understand. Phytoplankton is being challenged by a nutrient reallocation to these macroalgal blooms. We need to understand the process of incorporation of CO2 to the ocean is a very slow equilibration between atmosphere and ocean balances. It's not directly available. We have to be very careful in our models and how we're going to be explaining the role of CO2. At the same time, sargassum has organisms that are going to be releasing CO2 to the atmosphere. So this is the main home message, is that there is a competition in the ocean with phytoplankton that sustains the primordial trophic cascades in the ocean. So this is what I want to highlight. If anybody is going to be making call for proposals at the level of science, we need to understand the competition for nutrients and the role of CO2 reduction at the oceanic level, combining the trends of phytoplankton and the macroalgal blooms. So where we are living in a massive extractive lifestyle, that's where we are localized. We are living beyond the safe operation space of the planetary boundaries. All of them are surpassed. This is something that we need to understand integratively, holistically. Loss of biodiversity, climate change, nutrient enrichment, and all of this is moving the currents. And sometimes, as we were saying, now the Central America is receiving massive amounts of sargassum. We are already, when you see people losing their jobs, losing their houses because they have to move away from sargassum, this is what we need to think about. People, yes, tourism, yes, industry, but people. So, la révolution des algues, this is very important. Life started with the algae, oxygenic life. Through millions of years, changes of CO2, accumulation of fossil fuels depend on algae. Algae have been there to create life, to facilitate the life we have, to stabilize the general climate in the way we have, and so they can be a solution for a sustainable ocean food system. But I really want to call the attention to this forum that any seaweed-based solution must look at the potential ecological consequences. Sinking carbon without understanding the carbon cycle is really a big problem that we can have. And the other side, we have something to analyze at the oceanic level because that is our life depending on that. But at the other side, the management inside, in situ, I want to mean, investors and stakeholders, please shape your projects, trying to empower the locals. We need to have in mind the community and the engagement of the community to support justice, equity, and peace. So we cannot afford to implement climate solutions that leave us in a desolate, dysfunctional, conflict-ridden planet. And we are living that right now. But we can, and I love Shelley's final poem. We have been going through many different things. Algae are our companions. Thank you. I hope I did the 10 minutes, Fatu. Did my best. Thank you. And questions, I think they're going to be later on.
Thank you very, very much for an excellent presentation. And really one of the things that you mentioned, which is the great acceleration, is cause for alarm and cause for action and building political momentum. So with that, colleagues, I suggest that we move to another country experience and hear from Ghana. Now that we have the science and the evidence and the political context for the resolution. I think Ghana, I will be calling on Mrs. Peace Bekor Kove, who's the Principal Program Officer at Ghana's Environmental Protection Authority, to share Ghana's experience in managing the influxes of sargassum seaweed blooms. Peace, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished participants, I find it a great privilege to walk you through the journey of Ghana as we manage the sargassum experience that we have. As said earlier, my name is Peace Jejong. I work with the Environmental Protection Authority. Next slide. So Ghana is a coastal nation found in the West Africa. We are bound to the west by La Côte d'Ivoire and to the east by Togo and to the north by Burkina Faso. Since 2009, Ghana has been experiencing influx of sargassum in the country. From established literature, it's been established that two species, that sargassum, two sargassum species have been noted to occur naturally in Ghana. However, during a rapid assessment by the EPA in collaboration with researchers from University of Ghana and Water Research Institute, other two species, as the sargassum natans and flutans, were found to be among the species that we currently have in the country. The four maps over there shows you the occurrences of the four species as you move from the west coast of Ghana towards the eastern coast of Ghana. Since then, we have been experiencing the influx of sargassum species on our coast. The pictures show from the Volta region, one of such incidences in the Volta region, that's Keta to be precise, and also in 2015 in Adan, which is also in the Greater Accra region. And then in 2021, the picture there was taken on the coastline of Nungwa, which is in Greater Accra region. In 2021, the photograph there shows, so as we have been observing, the intensity of beaching increases from the west, and as it moves from the coastline of the western part of Ghana towards the eastern section, the volume and the of the sargassum beaching becomes lesser as you go. Next slide. So as the years have gone by, you see pictures showing the various intensities as the sargassum species are beaching, influxes on our beach. From all those times till now, the observation we've made shows that we have two peak seasons that you get them beaching in large quantities on our beaches. And this occurs, the first period is from April through May to June. And then the second one is mostly from August through to September. However, we have observed quite recently that as early as February, we are experiencing bleaching on our coastline. Next slide. How has it impacted Ghana? With about 10% of the total population of Ghana involved in the fishery sector, starting or along the value chain, either directly or indirectly, our fisheries sector is one of the most hit when we have this bleaching of sargassum. Instead of them hauling in fish, they haul in more of the sargassum species than they usually do. It has also affected our tourism industry in that looking at all these masses of weeds beaching on our beaches, it makes it obnoxious for even anyone to even walk on the beach, to even swim in the water, and let alone swim in the water. Should you venture to swim in the water, it results in your itching on the skin. And as the weeds decompose, the beach weeds decompose, it reduces the water, the air quality with the obnoxious smell that comes out of it. Next slide. How has Ghana responded? The responses have been in multiple folds. In 2025, the Environmental Protection Authority, with several stakeholders, came up with a national invasive species strategy and action plan. The purpose of this is to provide framework for the protection of aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems of Ghana and their native biodiversity of domestic plants and animals, including humans, from the risks posed by invasive species, including sargassum as well. Next slide. The guiding principles that have been that were adopted in the National Invasive Species Strategy and Action Plan looks at mainstreaming, taking the precautionary approach, preventing it from even getting through, and also makes it a state responsibility for the management of invasive species. And the approach to be looked at is adopting the ecosystem approach for the management of invasive species. Next slide. The strategic objectives as set in our NISAP looks at institution measures to ensure prevention, early detection, and rapid response to invasive species, improving on control and management of invasive species, developing the capacity and promoting research, creating public awareness, strengthening national policies and legal and institutional frameworks, and most importantly, collaborating with other institutions, both locally and regionally and internationally. And to add it all, providing timely and adequate resources for the management of invasive species. Next slide. So another way that EPA, in collaboration with other stakeholders, have been responding to this menace is to carry out research and also to carry out public awareness on the bleaching of this. So from 2015 till date, the agency has worked collaboratively with other institutions, which I mentioned earlier, CSIR, Water Research Institute, the University of Ghana, and quite recently, 5 years ago, Ghana EPA worked with the University of Southampton, University of York, University of West Indies, Mona Institute or Mona GIS Institute, University of Ghana, under the SATRAC project to carry out research in the Western region. And this research was carried out using the citizens approach to collect data, in that coast snap points have been established in 7 coastal towns where high school children in senior and junior high schools and their facilitators have been trained on how to send periodic information using the CoSnap app, in that the place they place a camera on the coast snap point and then take picture. This gives you the scenario on the coastline at each particular time of bleaching, real-time data. And this goes on and on and on and on. Next slide. With reference to education, the agency...
One more minute. One more minute.
The agency, in
Sorry.
collaboration with other stakeholders, have also carried out radio programs, visiting schools, visiting regulators, visiting traditional authorities, just to tell them the sources and uses of this. Next slide. How do we... Some of the challenges that we face during this process is lack of predictive capacity. Funds has also been a bit limited. Institutional coordination when it comes to managing the sargassum incident, and also limited utilization pathways as to what resources we can use, what other products we can get from the use of this beach seaweed. Next slide. Lessons we've learned is that integration is very critical when it comes to management of sargassum influxes. Communities are central. Data is required to drive processes, decision processes, and partnerships are very essential. Next slide. These are the various institutions that cut across regulators, enforcers, local assembly, researchers, academia, NGOs, the general public, both media and then donor partners that have helped us in one, writing the NISAP, two, in helping us conduct the researches and the education that we have carried out so far. Next slide. For us, looking forward, we hope to have early warning systems that could help us tell us when or how many it's beaching at a particular point. Regional cooperation is very key. We are dealing with a species that knows no national boundaries and come in as and when. Finance is quite required for all. We need to come up with innovative ideas to support this whole process. Research, we are still trying to understand this phenomenon. And we quite believe that implementing the National Invasive Species Strategy and Action Plan for Ghana is one of the ways to go about to solving this, managing this seaweed incident. Next slide. Thank you. Sargassum influx is not just an environmental challenge. It's an economic challenge, a governance issue, and a climate change act. The challenge is multidimensional. It requires an integrated and an inclusive response. I can comfortably end and say that Ghana is fully committed to collaborating with others to solve this issue that is not just localized, but international and global in nature. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for this overview of Ghana's policy response, which is underpinned by research and innovation for valorization, citizen science for data collection, and an integral part of the monitoring system. So and now we have a real challenge, which is we have 10 more minutes left, and we still have two presentations, one from the Cartagena Convention on the regional cooperation, and one on translating the resolution into action. And if I may kindly ask my colleagues, Susanna and Stephanie, to really give us the essence of their presentation, each in 3 minutes, so that we can accommodate a short, very, very brief exchange with the participants. We'll start with Susanna Pereira Valderrama, who's the program officer with the Cartagena Convention. Susanna, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, and that's a real challenge because I have prepared also this for 10 minutes, but yes, a pleasure to join here and with all the colleagues in the region and to try to share with you some reflections on the regional perspectives on sargassum inundations in the wider Caribbean region and in particular the role of the Cartagena Convention in supporting a coordinated response in the wider Caribbean region. But let me very briefly introduce the Cartagena Convention. Is the regional assist program for the wider Caribbean region, and is the only legally binding agreement also in the wider Caribbean region for the protection and sustainable development of the marine environment. It was adopted in 1983 in Cartagena, the Indias, and entered into force in 1986 and has 3 protocols directed to support the work on marine pollution from oil spills, land-based sources of marine pollution, and biodiversity conservation, the especially protected areas and wildlife protocol. It also has the support of regional activity centers that some governments of the region have been supported throughout the years. And here you can see a scheme of the Cartagena Convention. So we have heard a lot. It has been explained that around 2011, the region began to experience increasingly frequently and intense sargassum influx, and but right after it became a transboundary issue affecting multiple countries. Yes.
Susanna, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. Can we move directly to the regional cooperation side of it, since we've heard extensively from 2 speakers on that? Thank you.
Yes. So as it became a regional issue in 2019 at the Cartagena Convention COP15, as COP10 contracting parties formally requested the support of the Cartagena Convention to strengthen regional cooperation, and the countries agreed that the issue should be addressed under the SPO protocol. So the SPO sargassum working group was created at that time. Then we, following this mandate in 2019, effort focused on building a strong knowledge. Dr. Coates already referred to the sargassum white paper. We also have the support of the WECO project, who prepare awareness-raising materials. And more recently, a regional survey was conducted that this regional survey supported the elaboration of the regional action plan on sargassum inundations. So more recently, also our countries in the wider Caribbean region requesting that we move from a more integrated perspective from SPO to the Cartagena Convention, considering that the nutrients also can have an effect in the sargassum inundation. So here we are in 2026 with a more coordinated response on sargassum inundation. And our last conference of parties last year, the countries endorsed the Cartagena Convention Sargassum Action Plan, and then established a Cartagena Convention Sargassum Working Group. So now we have a more integrated mandate among the land-based sources of marine pollution protocol and the SPO protocols to add the Cartagena Convention level. So here you can see the main components of the sargassum action plan: governance, research, response, and communication. And yes, to wrap up, we continue strengthening cooperation with the Abidjan Convention, and of course, this engagement through the UNEA resolution now at the global level. And I'm sorry that it was so fast, but yes, thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Susanna, for your understanding and giving us the essence of what the regional cooperation looks like in the wider Caribbean. Now, Stephanie, over to you to really briefly highlight what it means to move ahead with the resolution.
Thank you so much, Fatou. So, Wanjiru, if you could just put the slide on the preliminary timeline. So essentially, what I'm here is to explain a little bit what are UNEP's ideas on how we will assist the operationalization of the resolution. And there were other slides that I had prepared, but we would make sure to make them available. And I highly encourage you to read the resolution carefully. I will be zooming in on the requests to UNEP. So as shown in the slide, in the coming months, UNEP will invite member states to express their needs for support in developing and implementing national and regional measures and action plans. This was a request on OP3 of the UNEA resolution. At the same time, UNEP will work to mobilize resources to respond to these needs as effectively as possible. In the next couple of weeks, UNEP will also invite stakeholders to submit information on existing activities, technical and financial resources, and ongoing initiatives addressing sargassum blooms. This will include information on the drivers, the monitoring, the prevention, collection, and management. UNEP will be communicating on a structure and approach for submissions of this information and leverage existing mechanisms such as the regional seas conventions and action plans. This mapping exercise will help identify gaps, opportunities for collaboration, and priority areas for coordinated action at both regional and global levels. We also anticipate that the first quarter of 2027 will be dedicated to synthesizing the information received and preparing the report, which is requested under OP4B. UNEP will also plans to convene the high-level meeting around the end of the second quarter or beginning of the third quarter of 2027. This, of course, is subject to financial considerations. This meeting could be organized back-to-back with another relevant event. And we also invite member states who are in the position to host the meeting to please notify us. In line with UNEA 8 documentation timelines, the report on the implementation of the resolution, which is mandated under operative paragraph 4D, will need to be submitted by September 2027. This is for editing, translation, and to have the documents ready in time for UNEA 8. I also take this opportunity to invite participants to share feedback, recommendations, and ideas on shared opportunities on the above timeline. And in conclusion, this UNEA resolution represents a critical step towards addressing a complex and growing environmental issue. Its successful implementation will depend on strong partnerships, science-based approaches, and coordinated action at national, regional, and global levels. Through its convening power and technical support, UNEP will play a key role in turning this resolution into meaningful action on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And colleagues, here we are at the end of the presentations and the allocated time. And we apologize for going through quickly some of these presentations. So if you would indulge us, we could add just 5 more minutes to maybe hear from Wanjiru. If we can just hear 2 questions and see among the speakers that are still with us, who would like to address those. Just to note that Susan, Claudia, and Dr. Cox had to leave already. So Wanjiru, do we have 2? Can you give us 2 questions? And for the remaining questions, we will endeavor to send you a written response as soon as possible, so that we don't leave any questions unanswered. Wanjiru, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So I have one question for Susanna, sorry. The question is, how can regional frameworks like the Cartagena Convention enhance coordination among countries affected by sargassum?
Thank you for the
Susanna?
question. And yes, I'm here. No, that gives me the opportunity to to speak a little more on what I have prepared for the presentation. So in our region, we have so far, and from our last COP, we received strong mandate from the country. So now we have a working group at the convention level. So at the beginning, only the contracting parties of the specially protected areas and wildlife protocol were participating in this working group, more focused on the biodiversity issues of sargassum. So now we have a more integrated approach, and all countries from the Cartagena Convention are invited to join the sargassum, but also from a more integrated perspective, also including issues on nutrient pollution or land-based sources of marine pollution, sargassum. So integrating all these countries in the working group is one way if we are promoting cooperation among countries. We are also going to prepare a report, the state of the convention area. So all countries will provide their information. We will have a dedicated chapter on sargassum. So we will receive all the information from countries, and of course, this report will include recommendations. And we also have a sargassum action plan. So all the contracting parties that attended the Cartagena Convention last year adopted a coordinated response that is included in this regional action plan to address sargassum inundation. So it has the 5 components I already presented, and the sargassum working group will support the implementation of the sargassum action plan. So through this instrument, the Cartagena Convention will be supporting the countries, and of course in collaboration with all the regional partners, to try to continue addressing the sargassum inundation issues as we have been doing since 2019. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susanna. Wanjiru, can we have another question, please?
Yes, there's one more question that has come in, and I think I'll open it up to all the speakers. So Norma is asking, is someone working with the impact on human health from gases coming out of the decomposition of sargassum? So she wants to know if there's any interconnectivity with human health and the management of sargassum.
Any taker for this question on the who's working on the impacts of human health? I see Dr. Vides, please.
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that area, but we just finished in December 2025, and that is also for the convention that you want to create another white paper. We just published a very recent, and we are happy to share, and we can talk about that in December 2025, very updated. And one of the major recommendations is that we need much more research in the health area. And just by walking in an area where you have sargassum, you're not going to get sick. But everything depends on the amount and the level of decomposition. As Shelley was also sharing, and I was just 2 weeks ago in Guadeloupe, and I could see with my own eyes all of the rusting of metals, everything, because the accumulation of sargassum is so big that the town has been evacuated to the level that it can really be dangerous to your health. So we are in the edge of seeing an epidemic without definition of symptoms. So we have children that grew their life with sargassum. This has come for 11 years already in several areas. So that is one of the major sections in which we need research, but at the same time, we cannot panic. So walking, swimming, a little bit in sargassum will not hurt you. I collect sargassum so many years, but be careful. And this is also very important for workers. The hotel industry, at least in Mexico and many other places, are the ones taking care in those sections where there is no hotel, there is no management, and people are left alone to their own means. And people that are working there for hours without any protective gear, they are having symptoms, respiratory symptoms. And there's people that if they spend many hours barefoot cleaning the sargassum, they are actually in sulfuric acid. So they have, wounds, very bad wounds in their feet. So it's context dependent, and this is something that managers need to be very aware of, and we need much more investment in the health system to analyze impacts in pregnant women, elderly children, etc. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Vides. And thank you, colleagues, and for staying with us throughout. We do recognize that we are running out of time, and we will answer most of your questions in writing. We will also share all the presentations. And with that, I would like to invite my colleague, Heidi Savelli, Chief of the Source to Sea Pollution Unit at UNEP, to give us a few closing remarks. Thank you very much, and I really enjoyed the session, and I hope you did too. Very informative. Over to you, Heidi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatou, and I wanted to express our sincere appreciation to all the distinguished speakers for their insightful and highly valuable contributions today, and also thank you to all the participants attending. We greatly appreciate the time investment in learning more about where we're heading on the implementation of the sargassum resolution. As my colleague Stephanie has indicated, there will be more information coming on how to contribute, what are the more dedicated timelines. We will share all the presentations, and we look forward to continue this discussion and dialogue. It's a highly complex issue, which will take many more kind of opportunities for exchanging information. So this is one of many. Thank you so much, Fatou, again for moderating, and thanks everyone. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much. Good evening, good rest of your day. Thank you.